So we'll go ahead and get started. Most of you, I mean, obviously, you know me, I mean, Eddie Kirkendall, I mean, I think we've met before, a couple times. So I guess my first question is, you know, tell me kind of what is your basic knowledge of investing? Basic knowledge of it. I'll start with you.
Not a whole lot. I mean, I do, you know, I'm just looking at it now. Haven't really thought much about it over the years. You know, I've had 401ks and things like that, but those are all managed by somebody else. So you know, we don't have personal management. I just started doing Treasury Direct.
Okay. Yeah.
So I bought a couple of I bonds, but those don't mature for 30 years. So there's some other things that I've got going in, as far as Treasury Direct, where I'm going to actually look more at T-bills, bonds, things like that, shorter term.
Yeah, I've gone through there before. You know, I think the challenge, you know, with some of those bonds is that, you know, of course nowadays it's all electronic. So back in the day, you used to actually get a certificate, you know, and so it's all electronically now. And there's so many different types, you know, and trying to decide which one do I want, what type, and stuff. And so, what is your level of investing? I mean, your knowledge of it.
I mean, I know the basics of investing. You know, just finding ways to invest your money to produce a rewarding, you know, outcome.
Yeah.
I haven't done much investing other than like really, small things. So I'm just here to learn.
Okay. And I will tell you, I mean, because we're actually going to be doing 2 different workshops, you know, this semester. So this is more kind of laying down the foundation. And then the next workshop, we're actually going to go in more depth about showing you how to create your own personal portfolio. You know, how you can actually do it yourself. And so, but I think, you know, most, you know, people, they feel a little uncomfortable about, you know, getting started and where to get started at. And so today, we are going to focus on really kind of like where can you go to get some of that research and start learning about these topics. So that's what we're primarily going to be focusing on. There's also some questions that we're going to look at. And so if you take a look here, and this is not in any particular order, I just kind of jotted some of these down on things that you should be thinking about before you invest. So I think one of the questions that we have kind of on there you put is, you know, get your bills, you know, under control and kind of lower your debt. I think before anyone even remotely even starts thinking about investing, you got to first make sure you can actually pay your bills, you know, and kind of get that under control. Because if you don't, it's going to be problematic. And we'll talk about why it's going to be problematic here in a minute. And so you also need to create an emergency fund before you even start really thinking about truly, you know, getting really, you know, into investing a lot. Because the thing about investing is if you start investing money into, you know, like a mutual fund or an individual stock, you know, the stock market goes up and down. And so, and if you don't have enough emergency fund, you're going to have to cash out that stock, and you could potentially lose money because you need that money right then and there instead of waiting for, you know, the market to go back up again. And so, having an emergency fund, I think, is important before you even start really thinking about that. Now, there's a lot of questions out there about, you know, how much money should I have, you know, in an emergency fund. And I can tell you, I've heard a lot of different stories. I mean, some say you need 3 months, some say you need 6 months, some say you need 12 months of, you know, your income, you know, for an adequate, you know, emergency fund. You know, I would say, you know, back in around 2009, 2010, when we started seeing people, you know, lose, you know, their jobs and get laid off, you know, during, you know, that Great Recession. The rule of thumb was having 3 months, but the problem was that people were not finding another job in 3 months. You know, it was taking a lot longer, and so a lot of financial advisors started saying, "Hey, maybe we need to change this and say you need to have, you know, like 6 to 12 months, you know, saved back." You know, so that is something that, you know, I would say before you start investing, make sure your emergency fund is adequate. You know, that you can get into that pretty quick. You know, now the problem is that, you know, most, you know, bank accounts, savings accounts, you know, you don't make hardly anything, you know, off there. You know, so I mean, that's something you have to deal with, but you have easy access to it. You can get into it anytime that you need. You know, you don't have to wait. Normally, if you sell a stock, depending on everything, it can take around a week or two in order for you to get your money. or so. So that is something that you have to factor. But if that stock is down, you're desperate for money, you're probably going to lose as a result. So that's why I say emergency fund first before you even remotely get started. Some other things, you need to get your spouse or family members on board with your plan. So if you're going to start investing, or saving your emergency fund, or whatever you're going to do, financially, if you're not all on the same page, it's going to be problematic. And so, why do you think that would be? Why do you think it'd be difficult if you're ready to start investing, but your partner or whoever doesn't really know what's going on? What could be problematic with that?
If you're sharing bills, you need to know all the money that's going out and all the money that's coming back in.
Absolutely. And you want people to feel invested, in what what you're doing, in the plan. I mean, like my wife, she really doesn't like, dealing with, like what stocks we're going to purchase. I mean, she basically leaves it up to me to do, but I still want her knowing what's going on, what we're doing, where money is going, because what happens if somehow I die? I want her to kind of know what she needs to be doing, when I'm gone. So I at least want her to have a basic idea of where things are going. Plus, I think, it's easier to help reach the goal together if everyone's on the same page. And sometimes there can be some resentment. If you're the one that's saving, you're budgeting, you're doing everything right, and then your significant other or whatever is, blowing money, not doing what they're supposed to, there's going to be some conflict there. But if you're working together, I just think it's going to be a lot more, easy as you're doing this. Plus, honestly, when you're saving and investing, there is a little bit of sacrifice that goes into it. And so you just don't want to be the only one, feel like you're the only one sacrificing. You want everyone on that same page. So I do think those are some of the things to be thinking about. Some other important questions to ask yourself: can you afford it? Obviously that's important. Are you at a stage in your life where you feel like you can afford, to invest a couple $100 a month, or $100 or $200, whatever it may be? Do you feel like you are at that stage where you can do that, or do you feel like every penny counts right now? I'm in school. I'm trying to do this. I'll focus on that when I get out. And so you do need to ask yourself: can you afford to start investing now? It's so much easier nowadays. You don't have to have nearly as months to start investing, so there's a lot of options. So one of the things that we'll look at, especially during the next workshop, is how much money does it really take to kind of get started on some of these different options that you can take. And so that's what we'll look at next time. Also on here, will you need the money, soon? You have to really start thinking about short-term versus long-term. Because remember when we talked about investing, the market will go up and down. And so if you need to take money out really quick, you could potentially lose money. So that's why have your emergency fund, have that established, and then start investing. I always invest for long term. I'm not, you'll watch TV and all these different movies and stuff, and they're making all this money really quick. Or it seems like they buy a company, a couple weeks later, they end up making millions of dollars. I don't believe in that type of investing. I think you need to focus on strong companies that you understand and know. Think about like Walmart. Most people know Walmart. Now, some people might not like Walmart, but you think that company is going to go under anytime soon. It's a well-established company. Most people understand what their product is, what they're doing, and so I don't like investing in companies that I have no clue about. That just it doesn't work for me. I want to make sure I kind of understand what I'm getting myself into. And so when it comes to the short term versus long term, in my opinion, always focus on long term. And long term, I would say at the bare minimum, I would say 5 years. But honestly, I would say more 10, 15, or 25 years. So I'm not investing, just to hurry up, try to make a little quick buck, and then go over to the next one, a couple of weeks later. I'm going to invest in a company that I believe in, that I think is going to be around for a long time. I call them my apocalyptic stocks. The only way they're going under is if we go into the apocalypse. I try to invest in very safe companies. And so you do need to ask yourself, short term versus long term, what are your financial goals? So in the end, what are you wanting to try to accomplish? If you're saving and you're investing, in stocks, what's the purpose of it? Do you plan on retiring? Do you want to retire relatively early, or are you going to be the one that works until you're 70, 75 years old? So what is the purpose of investing for you? For me, what I would like to try to accomplish is at least have the option where I could retire early if I choose to. Now, I may be, when I get older, maybe I still love what I'm doing, and so I want to stay working, but I at least would like to have the option of it. And I also want to make sure that I'm saving and investing so that way I can generate extra income. And so that way I can kind of help, live off, the dividends and interest. And that's why I think a lot of people invest, is for that additional income. And so when we're talking about investing in a company and you hear someone say, this company has a 3.5% yield, they're talking about the dividend. So a company, if you invest in them, some companies offer a dividend and where they pay you, and they typically will pay you 4 times a year, as on average. Now there are actually some companies out there that will do a monthly dividend. Not a lot of them do that, but there are some out there. And so, but typically you get 4 dividend checks a year. And so that's basically they are paying you for investing in their company. And so that happens about every quarter. And so just to give you an example, AT&T. AT&T is known for their dividend. And so their dividend, is like 5 or a little over 5-something%. It's pretty good. Most people don't get 5%, even if they go to the bank. And so we got a couple of handouts over there. You're more than welcome, Craig. And so I've invested in AT&T. I invested because of the dividend. Now, one of the things that I do is I reinvest the dividend. And that is something that a lot of companies give you the option of doing. And so, because I don't need the dividend right now while I'm young. And so that is actually helping me, kind of get better returns. So I reinvest my dividend. So like I think for my AT&T stock right now, I think the last time I checked, I'm getting, I want to say 300 and something every quarter, 300 something, because I have about, I want to say close to 30,000 in AT&T stock. So I get a pretty good dividend. It's like I get 49 cents per share. So for every share you own, you get a dividend, for per share. And so, but I'm just reinvesting that. And so I'm hoping 15, 20 years from now, if I just keep reinvesting that, I should hopefully be able to double my money eventually, in there, just reinvesting the dividend. And so I do like to choose companies that offer a dividend. Now there are some, companies that don't offer a dividend. There's some that are what we consider more growth stocks. Give me an example. Do you know of an example of a growth stock? I'll give you an example. Nike, is generally, considered more of a growth stock, even though they've been around a long time. They, typically are normally you can tell by part of the percentage of what they pay out. So like Nike's dividend is just a little over 1%. So most of the money that you're going to make investing is primarily going to come from what we call capital gains. That is where if you buy a stock for $50 a share, and then it goes up to $65 a share, and you sell, that part, after that 50, up to that 65, so that's $15 for every share, that's the capital gain part of it, that you're making. So that's where your profits really come. Now they do pay a small dividend, but primarily you're going to make your money off of the capital gains part. And so my question is you kind of understand that? Do you feel like kind of get that, more or less? Pretty straightforward overall. So know your financial goals, know why you're doing it. I'm primarily doing it because I would like to be able to retire, earlier. I don't want to work until I'm 65. That's just, I don't want to do that. Now I may change my mind as I get older, but I at least want to have that option. So I have chose stocks that have a mixture of dividends and also growth stocks. So I do a combination of that. And then I just reinvest my dividends for that. So the other question, what is my knowledge of investing? I think, everyone should ask themselves, that question. And I always try to keep in mind, I don't know everything about investing. I learn every day something new. And I think that's something that we have to get in the mindset, is that we have to educate ourselves. The moment we start thinking that we know everything about the stock market, I think that, that's when it becomes dangerous. Because then you start making decisions that you may not fully understand, and then you're going to potentially lose money then. So always know that you can always learn. Always learn when it comes to that. And then a big question, what is my risk tolerance? Because that's important. What is your risk tolerance? What are you willing to accept? Every time I invest, I always know in the back of my mind, I could potentially lose that money. I know that. And so the key is when you know that, then you start working on diversification. You start investing in a variety of different companies, different sectors of the economy, so that way you minimize some of your risk. So that way, like for example, let's look at the gas industry. A couple years ago, gas was doing great. At least when it comes to the companies. I mean, they could charge a lot for gas. I mean, we were paying, what, close to $3 a gallon. You know, the oil companies were making record profits, and then next thing you know, it collapses. And that's why we started paying, lower prices, at the pump. But a lot of these oil companies have been suffering as a result of that. And so they have to drastically cut back. You've even had some companies have to cut their dividend. So they were paying a certain percentage, but because they're not making nearly as much profit, they had to go in there and actually cut the dividend and reduce it, so you don't get nearly as much. And so normally, if you've ever invested in a stock company and your company that you've invested in cuts their dividend, it's not a good feeling, And so, because what that means is it's the long haul. I mean, there's a company that I invested in now. Before I really make a profit, I'm going to have to wait several years for, and that's ConocoPhillips is the one that I'm waiting on, because I bought when the company and the oil prices were record high, so the stock was pretty high. It's gone down quite a bit since then, so I'm going to have to wait several years. You don't really technically lose your money until you cash out. It just means I'm just going to have to wait a lot longer before I can cash out there. Now they're still paying a dividend. I'm still collecting that, and I'm reinvesting it. So I'm just going to have to wait several years. Chances are I'm probably going to have to wait at least 5 years, probably, before I come out halfway decent. But I don't need the money right now, so it's not a big deal. I'll just keep reinvesting the dividend and wait it out. And so some things here you see, personal financial resources. We're going to look at some of these. I actually have my own financial blog, so I'm listed on there. If you see, it says Okie Penny Pincher on there. I've got my blog right here. This is the website. I love this stuff. I can tell you that I've been budgeting, really I'd say probably since I was about 19. Growing up, we did not have money. I was a single parent. My mom, she was in a wheelchair, so she was disabled. I mean, we were on welfare. I mean, we struggled. I mean, we did not have anything. So growing up, we really wasn't taught, how to budget, how to save, because we didn't have the money to save. And so, I mean, we were, we went without quite a bit. I mean, it was hard just putting food on the table. I mean, we normally didn't have a phone. If we did, it was only for a couple months, because then you couldn't pay the bill, and then you lose it. And, I mean, you always get those electric, notices, that they're going to cut your electricity off. So, just growing up, budgeting, investing, we just didn't do that. We didn't talk about it. It wasn't a reality for us. And so I remember when I turned 18 and I started working, and I was just spending my money. Every check, I was just blowing it. Stupid stuff, new pants, $80 pants, and you name it. And I remember my friend, who I've known since I was like 7 years old. We worked at the same place. And so every time that I ran out, we had this kind of deal where you cover the other person. Now, we've known each other forever, so most friends probably wouldn't necessarily do that. But I was taking advantage of the situation. So I was like, hey, I'm broke. You're going to pay for my Taco Bell now. So, it worked out great for me. But I remember him, telling me, he's like, you cannot save for the life of you. He would just give me a hard time about that. And then I started looking at that as more of a challenge. And so that's when I slowly started to kind of get it in gear a little bit. And a lot of times I just read. I read different like stock books. You look online, different articles. There's lots of several blogs out there. And so I just kind of educated myself on that. And I remember it was around that 19, and I had saved up $2,000 at 19. I think, man, I got some money. And so now I have close to $400,000 now. I've been saving a while. So normally it hovers because the stock changes. So normally I think the last time I checked it was like $394,000. And so counting my investments, my retirement through the school, all that stuff. And and I think the reason why I'm telling you that is that growing up not having money, not really knowing what to do, having to self-educate yourself on to do it, it's possible. It's possible, especially if you start early. That's the greatest advantage that a lot of students have, is starting early, because that compound interest over time. And so, but I think it all starts with educating yourself. Don't rely on someone else to do it for you. And I remember you were telling me earlier about your 401k, about how, basically they manage it, so you don't. And so now I think a 401k is good, if your employer offers that. But I think you should not rely solely on one thing. A lot of people are banking on Social Security. Chances are Social Security will be there, hopefully, but what if it's not? Or what if they have to drastically reduce some of those benefits as we get older? So I think, if you're relying on one simple thing, for your retirement, chances are you're going to be working. Because I see a lot of people who end up getting Social Security and it's not enough, and they got to go work part-time. And then they have to be careful because they can only work a certain amount of hours, because they can only make a certain amount of income while they're collecting Social Security. So you're kind of capped, and so the idea is to create multiple streams of income. The dividends, interest from a bank like a CD or something. I mean, even those CDs right now, they're pretty low overall. I remember, around, late 90s, early 2000s, when the economy was doing really good, you could get 4 or 5% interest, with a CD, which is really good. I've seen even some around 6%. And so, but nowadays, you're lucky if you can get 1%. So it's tough. And so that's why investing is really important, because you have to be able to keep up with inflation. And so a lot of people go with bonds and stuff, treasury bonds and so forth. Now the trouble I think, that you get in with some bonds is that typically they tell you don't really invest too much in bonds until you start getting older. Because, it's safer, but it's the yield is less. And so most people start, as they get closer to retirement age, start allocating some of that money that they have in the stock market more into bonds. So it's a little bit safer, because you're going to need that money when you're older. When you're younger, you can be a little bit more risky and take those chances with the stock market, because you have several years, to kind of overcome any potential loss that you may have. And so, but on these resources, I've got my blog up here, so I'm going to just briefly show you this. Now, the only reason why my own little, self-plugging my own blog here, but what I like about this is that it's not just my blog, but I also have a personal resource, finance page here that you can look at. And I try to give you resources to a lot of other stuff. And so I'm going to click on this real fast. And if you scroll down here, yes, I have ads on there. Try to make a little extra income. So those who click on ads and stuff, I get a couple pennies per click, I guess. But so if we look here, I have a variety of different things. So one is millionaire calculator. So if you notice that, I have different links that you can go to and actually play around with some of these calculators. I just love this stuff. So you can go on there and it'll kind of give you a time frame about when you could hit $1 million. But it'll tell you what you need to save, how long you need to save it to hit that mark. And you can even go in there and change, the number, what you want to save and how long it'll take. And it'll break it down per year, how long it takes to get there, which I like. It's just fun to do that. And then, you have about stock purchasing agencies where you can go to. The next workshop that we do, we're going to go more in depth about those, and we're actually going to go on there and click on them and actually show you specifically how to do it. I go through quite a few of these, like Vanguard, very popular. So if you're wanting to get a mutual fund, or you want to invest in individual stocks, or so forth, you can go through Vanguard to do that. They're primarily known for being a low cost index. So when you go to an agency and you get a mutual fund, sometimes they nickel and dime you with all the little fees. And so Vanguard is pretty much well known for basically having the lowest fees out there. You're not going to get butchered when it comes to all those fees with them. So that's one of the reasons why I like Vanguard, because they are known for keeping the costs low in there. And so then you got ComputerShare, which is an agency where let's say you wanted to buy ExxonMobil. You can go to ComputerShare, and they have the forums where you can buy that individual stock. Essentially, what happens is that the stock companies like Exxon or whatever, they hire ComputerShare, to basically do that for them, because they need business. They want people buying their stock, so they hire them. It's just an easy way for individuals to go out there, not have to go through a broker necessarily, where you have to go in somewhere and do that. You can do it all online. Now I'm kind of old school, so you can fill this out online. I still print off the paperwork, fill it out, mail it in. I just feel comfortable doing that. That's just how I am. But you can actually do it all online. Wells Fargo, ShareOwner, online. It's almost kind of like ComputerShare. They're another agency where you can buy individual stocks. So we'll actually go, next workshop and actually specifically show you how to do that. They have everything laid out, what fees that they charge, if you purchase a stock. Some companies pay those fees. Like ExxonMobil, they don't charge you. You don't have to pay anything, to get it started, which I like. But there are some companies that say, we'll charge you, it's a $5 processing fee to get your account set up. So you just have to really look and see what fees are and kind of calculate that and make sure if it's worth it or not, you know, to go through them. And so, and then I've got budget worksheets, you know, here in templates. Mint is really good. A lot of, I'd say more millennials love that because, you know, they have a lot of different templates that you can use in Excel, but they also have apps that you can use that help you budget. You can just do it all over, you know, all on your phone, which is pretty nice. And so, but they have tons of different, budgeting worksheets. And so I really like that. You know, you got consumer.gov, which is one of my personal favorites, has a PDF, you know, file where you can go in there and you put in all your bills and it actually calculates it for you as you're putting the stuff in there, which I like. And so you put in how much money you make a month, and then you put in all your bills, and it just keeps calculating what you should have, you know, after you've paid for all your bills. And that kind of gives you an idea of what you could potentially be saving, which, you know, is nice. And so, but for our purposes, what we're really going to focus on is this one, and these are personal financial blogs. And so, now obviously I've got my own blog, so you know, which we're looking at, but, you know, I look at a lot of other financial blogs. So, I mean, you know, my blog is just one. You know, I mean, there are, you know, thousands out there. And honestly, there are 1,000 out there that I think are probably better than mine. You know, I had a blog for very long. I've had it since July, so. But some of those ones that I really like is Retired by 40. So retiredby40.org. Now, obviously that's probably not realistic, especially for me. That's not going to happen. You know, I'll be 38 next month, so. But the guy who does it, his name's Joe. He was a computer engineer, and so he had a pretty good salary. I mean, he made really good money, you know, when he was young. He worked for quite a while. He saved a whole bunch. I mean, and his wife is also in the IT field as well, so she's still working out there. You know, she still likes what she's doing, but he was burned out. And so his goal was to try to retire before 40, which he was able to do. I think he retired when he was 38 years old. And so, you know, and I really love his blog because it's just so detailed. I mean, he really breaks down all of his finances. He tells you exactly what he did. You know, he does like a monthly, you know, like a chart of where his net worth is, you know, how much money, you know, he's accumulated and stuff. Just very detail oriented, which I like. And you know, he's just a good writer, so I really like, you know, his website. Frugal Gene, you know, is another one that I like. I think that's more tailored towards millennials, and so, but it is a really good, you know, website. You know, there's Picky, you know, Pinterest is also really good, and it's not, they're not just talking about, you know, finances, they're talking about other things as well, which I think makes it interesting. And then one of my favorites also is Rockstar Finance. Now, why I like Rockstar Finance? And then is because they list pretty much all the different financial blogs out there. So it's a good reference point to start at. So like if you click on it, and so if you're on the website, you can easily go here, you can click on that, and it'll take you to these links. So this is Rockstar Directory. They, you know, pretty much track most of the financial blogs that are out there. And so that's why I say getting on here allows you to go and look at all types of different financial blogs. And you can kind of find the ones that actually are interesting to you, because there's so many different ones out there, different styles of writing and things that they cover. And so this is, I think, a really good starting point. And there's so many different things, you know, that they cover on here. So like, if we look at blogs, you know, you can click on them, just click on the blogs, go down here, and it just has them all listed. And you can go and put it in alphabetical order by just, you know, clicking, you know, the blogger. You can do it that way by name. And then you can just go in there and look. I mean, there are just so many different ones. It shows you kind of their age group for some of them. You know, so I like to try to look at a mixture of ones from the 20s, 30s, 40s, and 50s, and different ones. Because they cover different things. You know, they're at a different stage in their life, so they may be focusing on something else. And so, but it's good to just kind of take around and look there. Some put their net worth on there. I think when I was looking at Joe, that, you know, that Retired by 40, his net worth he listed on there. This is pretty high, so I don't know if it shows it, but let's see here, net worth. Here. I know the last time I saw, let's look for Joe, we're close. Right there. So he's worth $2.3 million. So he lives in Oregon, so, but he also has rental properties as well. So that's part of that net worth, probably. And so, but I mean, he's been saving. He's been saving for quite a while. I mean, he's in his mid-40s now, close to it. And so, but yeah, great website, and you can go in there, and then you can click on the websites. And it'll take you there. And so, and you can just take a look and see what different articles are out there. And, so, if you have time, I mean, obviously, you got homework, got a lot of things going on, but I would just say every once in a while, when you get free time, it's good to just take a look at this stuff. I mean, they talk about like a Roth IRA versus a traditional IRA. And you kind of, you look at it from their perspective. So they're not using all these technical fancy words trying to sell you. All they're doing is just say, hey, this is what I did. This is what worked for me. And then you can kind of take it for what it is, doing that. And so, but I really do like checking out, these websites. So that's, a starting point that I think most people should do. Definitely look at Rockstar Directory. I mean, I really like it. And so, but if you look on my list on here, there are several that I put on here. Most of these you can find on my blog, these links and stuff. But I do think, you have to self-educate yourself by first taking a look at some of these different blogs or books, that are out there as well. I mean, there are plenty of good books. And so I'm going to kind of show you some of those here in a second. Okay, so, and I even got stuff on here that, for resources for, like if you're, for kids and stuff. I do think, need to be teaching them as well. How many of us, if you think back, these are just some of my own articles that I did. But let me go here specifically. So basic investing, how to get started. I have some links here to help you a little bit. So go here. Look at some of the links right here. So one of the books that I really like, is Rules of Investing: How to Pick Stocks Like a Pro. It's by that Michael, Civi. I really like, his book. It's old. I mean, it's like early 2000s. So, I mean, it's definitely kind of outdated, But what I like about it is a lot of the principles that he talks about, you can still use today. And so, I mean, so he really kind of lays a good foundation about what you should be doing when you're looking for stocks, things that you kind of need to know. Like just one example that he talks about negative correlation between stocks. And so when he's talking about stock picking, let's say, it goes by industry. So let's look at the oil and gas company, situation like we talked about earlier. When oil prices are really high, what companies may suffer a little bit? Think about that. Do you think trucking companies may have a harder time because they're paying for more, higher gas price? So if the oil companies are doing really good, chances are the airlines are probably not doing quite as well because one of the biggest expenses they have is gas, fuel, their planes. And so he kind of talks about when you're trying to diversify and invest in a variety of different companies, is have a variety of different industries that you invest in. So if one's down, so like if you invest all your money, every single cent in oil companies, what happens if they're doing bad, like, they have in the past couple of years? I mean, let's say you invested $30,000 at the height of it. There's a good chance that it's probably half that right now, because the industry's been hit pretty hard. Now they're slowly starting to make a little bit more profit, and you've seen that in the gas prices. They're starting to move up a little bit, but if you spread it out into different industries, it should balance out a little bit better. So that's why you should have some stock, in an oil company. You should have some stock, potentially in the airline industry. I mean, just a variety of different types out there. So that's what we talked about when we were talking about negative correlation. And so I just love his book, and it's easy to read. That's another thing that I like about it. I mean, it's not all this fancy jargon that you can't understand, all this stuff, technical stuff. I mean, he really lays it out, for anyone. And so I do like that. Intelligent Investor is probably one of the most well-known investment books out there. The reason why is that Benjamin Graham, he was basically the mentor for Warren Buffett. So, I mean, Warren Buffett learned from him. And so he's pretty well known. And so his book, I mean, I like it. I mean, it's a little hard to read because, it was done like in the, I want to say the early 1950s. So, I mean, it's an older book, but they come out with, new editions of it. But, it's a good one. And so I would just say, go here, take a look at some of this stuff, find what works for you. But, you have to be actually out there learning this stuff. Don't rely on others to do this. Because I think that's one of the biggest mistakes, a person could do. Because if you're relying on others, what happens if they make a decision? So let's say you go to a financial advisor. They have you put your money in a certain company. If it goes under, are they really going to care? I mean, what do they look? They still get their fees. I mean, they're going to be fine. Now, hopefully you have a financial investor that actually does care and wants to make sure that you do well. But I mean, honestly, the person that cares about, you know, your money the most is who? You, yeah. So why not, you know, take an active role in managing your own money? Now that doesn't mean that you shouldn't ask for advice and learn, you know, but there are so many different communities out there where you can learn and ask questions. I mean, a lot of these bloggers, you can post comments, you know, about their article, or you can email them, kind of separate, kind of, you know, privately, and you can ask them questions. Jill recently had a person who, you know, had a scenario, and she's talking about, she's on her own, she saves this much, she doesn't really feel comfortable with the stock market. What are some basic things I can do to just kind of start getting in? And so what he did was he posed that question to all the people that look at his blog. And so everyone started kind of offering different types of advice on how to help that person, you know, which was nice. And so that way, you know, I mean, everyone's in it together, because we've all made our own mistakes when it comes to, you know, the finances. And sometimes, you know, a lot of these bloggers talk about that, you know, the mistakes that they made and how they got out of that situation, you know, and how they're still digging themselves out of debt and different things. So not every blogger is, you know, super